we start going around again. Unless it's, oh yeah, yeah, 6 in the morning. Yeah. So anyway, we're gonna get started. Our guest today is Janice Gilbert, and we're gonna learn more about her, but just a little teaser, she's a guitar player and a musician of renown. And we're going to talk a little bit about music, a little bit about the music business, and and just how people are doing, how musicians are doing, how she's doing, and talk a little bit about her music. And we're going to hear her do some music, which is, that's a little different experience than we often have. So we'll get to see some of her performance and experience her performance right here on Zoom. So with that, we're gonna start off, James, by asking you to give us some kind of elevator speech about Janice. Who is Janice?
That's a good question. I'm still finding a little more out about her every day. Well, just kind of the storybook version, I guess. I grew up near Miller, South Dakota, on our family farm. I'm one of five children. My parents still live in Miller, and my older sister has taken over the family farm, and my youngest sister has a farm about 8 miles from there. Um, my oldest brother passed away when he was 5 from neuroblastoma, and I was his bone marrow donor at the ripe old age of 1.5. So, um, and then also have another brother, younger brother, who lives in Volga, South Dakota. So, I'm the only one that's moved out of state. I moved to Tennessee for about 7 years and then came back home to South Dakota because it's the best state in the nation. Um, and so let's see, went to, I did all my kindergarten through 12th grade at Miller's, and then I went to SDSU for music education. Taught in Arlington, South Dakota, K-12 vocal music for 4 years. And then um, I guess I should stop it for a second. But while I was in Arlington, I did this kind of a contest at the state fair, which was the Dakota Star contest. And the prize was to record a CD single with this gentleman named Chad Sharp. And so I won that contest, and he found out I was a songwriter. And so I got to put my music on this CD, which was like a huge, like, kind of life change right there. I was kind of like, oh wow, like people actually do this. I could actually do this. And I came home one day from a very bad day at work, and I said, we should just move to Tennessee. And my husband was like, okay. So we ended up moving to Tennessee, and we were there for 7 years. I was still teaching. I was teaching at an elementary school, a rather large one, actually. It was over 1,000 students, which was more than the town of Arlington. I think Arlington had a population of like 998 at the time. So there was basically a small town in this one gigantic building. And any free time I had, I spent songwriting, co-writing, playing at writers clubs. Yeah, that's about it. And then I would take trips home 2 to 3 times a year because the school I was working at was year round, so we had like pretty nice breaks for fall break and winter break and spring break. So while everybody else was going south to Florida for their spring break, I was coming home to snowy South Dakota. Then in about 2012, 2013, there's a lot of serendipity in that story. I won't save it all for now, but there were these signs basically that were kind of telling me to come back home. Uh, and I'm not gonna cry, so we're not gonna get into that right now. But we ended up moving home in 2013 and found out we were pregnant with a baby boy. And 2014, he pretty much turned our lives upside down in a good way. And we've been here since 2013. I've been teaching high school and middle school choir at T area here in the little bedroom community of Sioux Falls. So yeah, that's kind of the short version.
So that's a nice encapsulated version. And now I would like to turn to your music.
Okay.
How would you describe your music?
Well, I would say, okay, my first song I ever wrote was about my cat Mittens. Um, so I would think if I were to describe my music, I would say it's all based on personal experience
Mm,
for the most part. Any of the good stuff is based on personal experience. For a while when I was in Tennessee, I was really focused on more of the commercial aspect. And so that some of that music is not as authentic as I'd like it to be, but I guess if I were to put it in a genre, I would mostly write contemporary country, some contemporary Christian, and then now I kind of say my style has kind of turned more to a Americana folk style, I guess.
mm,
I don't know. I'm trying not to box myself in. I'm trying to just whenever the muse hits, write what I hear. So,
mm. So you use the word authentic, and I hear people say that often. What do you mean by
okay.
authentic?
I think when, for example, we have a songwriters group in Sioux Falls called it's just a chapter of the Nashville Songwriters Association out of Nashville. And I've been not writing a lot this year, and I could blame it on a bunch of things. But I won't because I just haven't been writing a lot. I did have double, I can't even think now, carpal tunnel surgery this summer. That was a big reason for not playing, but you don't have to have an instrument to write. So I got to stop using that as an excuse. But so we were getting ready for a meeting, and every time we have a meeting, we do a song critique. So you can bring a song that you've written and you play it for the group, and they kind of give you feedback. And this particular song was had a great. I love the hook. I love the chorus. The story though is about like a physical abuse basically, and this broken relationship. And when I got done playing, one of the members, and she's very brave whenever she speaks. Her name is Deanna, and she's just like no filter, and I love that about her. And she says, "Have you lived this?" And I was like, "No, actually, I had a co-write one day in Nashville, and this is just an idea that I had, and so we wrote it." And she's like, she almost seemed offended that I had tried to like tell this story that I hadn't lived through. And so that was when it really kind of clicked with me, like that to me is authentic. Like if I'm going to write, I want to write from experiences I've had because I can't tell somebody else's story because I haven't lived their story. So that's kind of what I mean by authentic.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting because um, often people do tell stories that they imagine. I mean, I
Right.
think they call that fiction.
Yes, yes, very true. Right. And there are some really great fiction writers, and I just am not a really great fiction writer.
Yeah. So that brings us then to getting to developing a a a song or a story that comes out of your own experience. Um, can you tell us a little bit about how you do that?
Well, I think a large part of there's so many different stages in songwriting. There's the beginning songwriting where you just play whatever is coming to you, and it's hard to describe where it comes from. It's almost like a spiritual thing where it's like I just sat down and an hour went by and here's this song. And I don't even remember how I wrote it. And then after you've been doing it for a while, you understand that there are things that go into making a really great song. There's form and a catchy melody and the rhythm aspect of it. So what I like to do when I sit down to write, I normally have like a line that is just in my head, and sometimes it's a musical line, but most of the time it's like a one line of lyric that's attached with melody. For example, this last summer we had moved into this house in T. So we've been in this house for about a year and a half, and I just the backyard, like I'm just imagining all the memories Dawson's gonna create here. And I had this. It was like the middle of July when the cottonwoods were like starting to let go of the cotton, and it looked like a snowstorm in the back. And I was just like dancing in the July snow falling down from the cottonwood trees, and I was like, wow, July snow. And I just kept picturing Dawson, and so I wrote a song like around that idea of just these memories of him. He hasn't even created them yet, but just picturing him there. And so that's kind of, I mean, there is, I don't want to say that some of my songs that are story songs aren't authentic, because I do have some. There's one that I wrote on a snow day called Braver Than You Believe, and it's a completely made up story, but I attached an emotion to my niece at the time, and that song like is still probably one of my favorites. And I don't really like a lot of the songs that I write. So yeah, I guess it all kind of starts with an idea and attach it to, a person or a place or thing that means a lot to me. And then that's kind of where I get my start.
Mhm. So you mentioned in developing an authentic story or authentic song, something along the lines of, you have to walk the walk in order to, to talk the talk, so to speak. So what do you do to expand your repertoire?
Hmm.
You know, if all you're going to write about is your experiences, what are you doing to expand the experiences of Janice?
That's a good question. Cuz I've always said that like when life's great, like I don't have anything to write about, cuz it takes like heartache, and like you had a broken relationship or you had a bad breakup, and then you write because there's so much emotion tied to that. So I look for
Well,
ideas.
that's just country music.
Yeah, that's true. Throw the dog in there, the pickup truck. But I look for like ideas in lots of different things. Movies, there's always great lines in movies. I have like a running notepad on my phone um, of lines that I've heard in movies, or I like to read and really great stories. Actually, you talk about fiction and nonfiction. I have never been a good consumer of nonfiction, and I'm actually reading Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert right now, and it was like all the rage like when it first came out, and I bought the book and I never read it, and then of course we've been home for since December 11th because of COVID. So now I've been reading again, and there's so many great lines just in like reading about somebody else's experience and kind of taking that walk with them. So I think it's really being in tune to what's going on around you, watching people, um, like just being an observer. I think is really where and also listening to other types of music. I love to just explore new music. And also once you listen to something for so long, you start to like kind of see those influences in your music as well, which is kind of interesting too.
You mentioned that one of the, if you're going to pigeonhole, if you're going to pigeonhole your music, you would, one of the areas would be Christian.
Yeah, I have written a few like contemporary Christian songs. When I was in Nashville for a while, I played at this big mega church called Crosspoint, and that was the first time I had ever experienced the whole like I grew up in a Lutheran church, and it was, you say the same thing every Sunday, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's what I grew up with and I love it, and I'm a member of the Trinity Lutheran Church here in T. But that was the first time like I would lose myself in the worship part of it and hands go up and you cry during the service, and I think that was just so inspiring to kind of be moved through music that I was trying to write kind of about those experiences. I don't have a lot of the Christian songs that I've written. A couple are kind of more country, like they're Christian but they're more of the country genre, and then I have a couple that I wouldn't necessarily say are worship songs, but more like kind of at my lowest point and God, I need your help type of a
Mm.
song. So,
Well, that's kind of fitting with country music too.
yeah,
Put,
see,
put
I
the
just
two of
can't get
those,
away from it.
put the two of those together. You're as long as God is doing okay, you got nothing to write about. But as soon as you feel abandoned and the devil happens, hey, we got a song here.
Right, exactly.
Well, great. Well, I would like, in order to understand and actually to, as a platform to move further in this conversation, I'd like to hear some of your music. Can you pick a song, any song?
Any
So
song, huh?
yeah, yeah. So we can have an idea of like how Janice sounds when she.
Okay, well, I will play you I really like this song, which is saying something, but it doesn't mean it's good. So I've got a song that I'll just play that one that I was talking about with the July snow. And hopefully you can't hear my son upstairs like banging on the floor playing the Wii. We'll see. Let me pull this lyric up because I don't want to forget my words. That would be bad. So hopefully you'll be able to hear okay without seeing the words on the screen. But
You mean there's no bouncing ball that goes?
no, no bouncing ball. All right, we'll see how this goes. So this one is actually called Summer Stay With Me. So I mean, when I wrote it, yeah, you could say you're telling Summer to stay, but it's more like Dawson stay with me as a 6-year-old and don't grow up. So, all right, we'll start. A breeze, a gentle breeze is blowing. See it slowly twist the rope on that old swing. The smell of lilacs drift across that long meadow. That big old moon is putting on a show. And you're waiting for your moment when the stars come out and crickets start to sing. Fireflies are blinking in your mason jar. They make it so you're not scared of the dark. Summer comes and goes, but till the seasons change again, I'll hold you in my arms, won't let you forget. Dancing in the July snow, falling down from the cottonwood tree. Summer, stay with me. Blue, a perfect blue sky morning. We could spend the whole day being kings and queens. It's magical and innocent, and life is but a dream. Sometimes I wish time would just freeze. Summer comes and goes till the seasons change again. I'll hold you in my arms, won't let you forget. Dancing in the July snow, falling down from the cottonwood tree. Summer, stay with me. of change are blowing, but don't let go. Just stay in this moment, dancing in the July snow, falling down from the cottonwood tree. Summer, stay with me. Summer, stay with me.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised I haven't heard you on the radio. That's
You're
wonderful.
too sweet. Oh my
No,
goodness.
no, that's. I can tell you there are a lot of people I have heard on the radio that don't sound nearly that good.
Thank you.
Well, that was wonderful,
Oh,
wonderful.
thanks.
So when I think about the things you were saying before about where you get a hook for a song and authenticity and that kind of thing, it seems like a person could find a lot of things to write about um, that you know don't necessarily have to do with risk risk cutting. You know what I mean?
Right.
It could be there are a lot of things that are even sentimental that can be written in a minor key, but doesn't necessarily have to be, let's say, bordering on or entering into traumatism, you know.
Right.
So, like that song didn't seem like that. That song seemed like a very peaceful song in a very peaceful place. Would you disagree with that?
No, I wouldn't disagree with that. It still makes me cry. I think I just like, I don't know. I get really
You
emotional
just like
about.
crying, then.
I know it doesn't seem like a sad song, but I just like, I don't know. I think I get too far ahead of myself and I picture my son growing up and you know all that stuff.
that that's a problem for both parents and kids.
I want him to grow up. It's happening so fast. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
sure, sure. Just not this decade.
right. Stay little for a little bit. Yeah,
Maybe 2050. Grow up.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's talk a little bit about um, the music business,
Okay.
you because that's, as I was saying before, there are a lot of people who are, you hear, and they're really good, you know, they have good chops, so to speak. They know what they're doing. They've developed their act, and they just don't seem to make it. And there are clearly some people who they don't even sing their own songs. They have other people stand in and sing their own song, and they just lip sync it, and then they go to the top of the charts.
Right.
The music business is strange.
It's very strange.
Okay, so can you talk a little bit about what you're doing with your career, how you're trying to make sense of that and make that music business work for you?
Well, I've been thinking about that question a lot because part of coming home after being there and experiencing it is I mean every I'm human, I think about what other people would think when I come home. It's not like I came home with my tail between my legs by any means, but there's always that fear like people are going to be like, "Oh, well, you failed." Well, I always look at it as at least I gave it a try, you know? And I left and I tried it. And I will tell you that the biggest part of making it in the business is knowing how to network. Um, and I'm not a great networker. I would be the first to tell you that. Like I love talking with people and having conversations with people, but down there it's like you start talking to people and if they realize that you're not somewhere up the ladder where you can help them, then the conversation sometimes just completely stops. And I don't work well in that sort of an environment. So by the time I was ready to come home, it was just like, why am I here doing this? And I'm missing out on so much. My grandpa had gotten sick, and I was just thinking, I've like missed out of 7 years of birthdays for my nieces and nephews. And so yeah, the music business, it's hard. It's, you got to get your butt in a chair at the writers nights and put in your time, and I learned so much like sitting there and listening to other people. But I'm also not a Carrie Underwood, especially for girls. There's definitely a double standard for how you look down there. For an example, I would play at like the Bluebird Cafe, which is, if anybody knows anything about Nashville, like the Bluebird Cafe is where everybody's discovered. Like Garth Brooks was discovered there, and but I would go to these writers' nights there, and there'd be three gentlemen in plaid shirts and work boots, and then the one lady in the round would be in this tight fitting shirt with her breasts popping out and her makeup's all done. And I cannot be that person. I
Sure
mean,
you can.
stick me out in the field and I will pick rocks for the day. Like that's, yeah, I couldn't conform to that. So I think there's a couple reasons why, I would say the networking and just fitting into the image that they need you to be. I wasn't able or wanting to conform to that, I guess.
I would say though that if those guys in the flannel shirts had showed up in a tight skirt, they probably wouldn't have gone over too well either.
That is a very true statement.
They probably wouldn't have got the best reception in Nashville.
I have never thought about that. Yeah, that's a good point.
There's boxes for everybody, especially
That's
if they push their breast up. Not good.
oh, that's so true. Oh my goodness.
so, uh, so now let's look at like you're back in South Dakota now,
Yeah.
and what are you doing to create a music career for yourself here? And what talk a little bit about the process or slash struggles with it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I definitely have struggles. I think part of being back is finding where I fit in. Like South Dakota doesn't have like a big niche, I should say, for like songwriters and places for people to play original music. A lot of the clubs still want full bands, and they want you to play covers. They want the people want to go to a restaurant and hear songs they know, and that's why when you go to Nashville, like Broadway's such a big thing because all those bands on Broadway are playing all the songs that people know, and so it's hard to get past that. Just finding a place that's gonna let me just play my music. And I've learned some covers, but I don't want to play other people's music. I write music that I hope resonates with other people or connects them to a memory. And so you need to find a place that's going to allow you to kind of have like a listening room type atmosphere where people are just listening to the songs. It's not just this background, music basically that's creating a vibe. So that's a huge challenge. I found that the places where I have the best listening audiences are just places I would not expect. Like the Old Courthouse Museum does like I think it's like every Friday in the summer, maybe. They have music on their patio, and just the people that come out to listen over the lunch hour, like they're just so intentional with their listening. And also another place that just started up was this little amphitheater out at Good Earth State Park. They started that a couple years ago, and the audience just, you can tell they're listening, they're nodding along. And so that's kind of my biggest struggle, is finding a place where people are interested in hearing what you have to say, hearing your music instead of just playing in a club.
Yes. Now there are other venues, and we can explore those, mostly in terms of could that work for you? And that one is like the South Dakota Arts Council. They have like a traveling musician thing. Have you tried anything like that? Or
No, but I love that idea, like an artist in residence type thing.
yeah, yeah, and not only the artists in residence because that's out of school stuff, but they subsidize like concerts basically. You
Okay.
can, yeah, you can like you get on their list, their roster, and people like if they want to bring you to their community, especially their arts council, bring you to their community, and then they help make that possible. That's one thing. Another one is churches, and another one is maybe getting together with other musicians and creating your own venues, which brings me to venue creation. Do you have you done any of that?
Well, my songwriters group here in Sioux Falls, we had a backyard barbecue. And we hosted like a writers night, and
Good.
like we had people from our neighborhood, and there was like even it somehow got out on Facebook, and there was this a gentleman who was a parent of one of my former students came. I didn't even know he played music, and he showed up and played at our open mic night.
Mm,
Um but as far as the venues, like the actual other people would come to,
mm,
we've done some open mics, or we've like picked a night where we would go to. Oh, I'm blanking on the name now. It's changed names so many times. Now I think it's a pizza place on the railroad tracks down there in Sioux Falls downtown,
mm,
where we'll like pick a night and we'll like all go to an open mic night together.
mm,
But as far as like creating a listening room or finding a space,
mm,
we haven't done anything like that. I know there Matt Faulkner, who is out of Montrose, that's
mm,
like his big dream is to create that, and he was in the works to create kind of like a oh, what is the songwriter festival, Kerrville Folk Fest down in Texas. He was wanting to create something like that here in the area, like in Montrose, and I know he was working on that, and then of course COVID hit. But so I know there are some people who are really, really trying to create spaces like that. Um, but yeah, as far as myself being involved, I haven't.
yeah. Well, just as a note, be in touch with me. Um, I think we can, if you guys are still interested, I can help make that happen.
That would be great. Thank you.
Because it's just really a matter of organizing it. Uh, I would say that the venues actually already exist if the musicians come and you get 4 or 5 groups of musicians who want to do that, and pretty much it's done. I mean, all of the pieces. As I walk around, especially in Sioux Falls, as I walk around Sioux Falls, I see all of the opportunities. The only thing I don't see is the musicians getting together and doing it themselves.
Right.
You know. Now let's talk a little bit about like audience acceptance. You mentioned something about people want to hear the
Stuff
the
they know.
standards.
Yeah.
They want to hear what they've heard before. Uh, and my own uh, musical mind tells me they're not hearing you; they're hearing what they heard before. And they just want a scaffolding to hear the Beatles in their head and have a body in front of them doing, but it's not you they're listening to.
Right.
Then that gets back to the authenticity thing, and at the same time, if you're being authentic, how do you play other people's music if that's not your story?
Right. Well, I think, you know, what got me into music in the first place is hearing songs that I associate with memories. You know, for example, I like to sing crazy, and that's not my story, but I instantly connect it to singing for my grandpa. And so you can still be authentic in singing other people's songs, I
Oh,
feel
yeah.
like. Um, but I also feel like you don't get that authenticity unless the song means something to you. You
Mm,
know? Like you can sing something well, but not necessarily connect to it. Like I can go to karaoke and sing a Kelly Clarkson song. You know what I mean? I can sing it well, but
mm,
it doesn't mean I'm like singing it like to connect with somebody. It's trying
mm.
to show off that I can sing it well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 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 exactly. And the other thing about that is like you can sing a song and make it your song.
Right.
You know, like a song like Crazy, I could see you singing that, you
Yeah.
know. but, but yeah, if you know, you could, you know, if you had an experience that seems to be what you took away from what that person was writing about when they wrote that song, you know, I think that's what makes classic songs. That's what makes a song connect with people is when they hear that song, they hear themselves, they hear a story, they hear their story
Right.
in that person's song. There's a certain connection. So if the singer can bring themselves to that song, then I don't know, is that less authentic than a
I
song
don't
that you write?
I don't think so. Like a good person that kind of comes to mind is like Trisha Yearwood. I loved every album Trisha Yearwood ever put out, and I don't think she wrote a single song on her albums.
Mm,
She just has this knack for, and I'm sure there's a team around her that helps, but for just picking great songs, well crafted, and she just the emotion she brings to it. Like I would have never known that she didn't write any of those songs if I hadn't been obsessed with like cassette liner notes. Because at the time I would always want to see who the songs were written by. So it just the realization one day that she didn't write them, like she's just such a great storyteller. You know, I just yeah, she's one of mine that I've always looked up to. That she doesn't write the song, but she just like communicates the song so well.
mhm, mhm. Well, South Dakota, that's, you know, there's some good musicians here. I've heard them. Uh, there are venues, and I think audiences may have to be trained, you know, and when I say trained, I mean they have to have an opportunity to have an experience that can become a unique experience for them. And sometimes you have to give people permission to be something other than what they have been the last 50 years, you know, because for some people, they don't, that's a lot scary.
Right.
Um, but then everything that's conservative at one time was radical, you know, so
True.
you know, it's just a matter of time and persistence, really. I'd like to open it up to our other audience in, you know, that's with us now to see if they have some questions or comments about uh, your experience in the music business or music, if they have questions about music and preparing music.
Okay.
Don't all speak up at once. Well, while they're thinking about it, I have more questions, but I want to make sure that everyone else has an opportunity as well to chime in. If you guys have a question, just chime in, turn your microphone on and ask a question. Lee, did you have a question?
I was trying to form it in my mind before I said, uh, you have lyrics and you have background music. Um, one can be without the other. And sometimes one is dominant over the other. Like when you sang your song about summer, I loved it.
Thank
because
you.
I love nature. I connected with it a lot. But the background music was there because I saw the violin or the guitar. To each their own. Some people never need to hear lyrics. And I also want to know what your take is on how it enhances your mood or helps your mood or not. How music is used. And I've noticed on TV, there is background music with everything, everything, to the point you don't hear it. It's almost ab nausea. What is your take on the use of music?
That's a good question. So, how I use music, um, I also teach choir, and so I'm singing with children for a large part of my day. So sometimes, like you said, when it's in everything, sometimes I just need to turn it off and have some silence because I mean, when you get around Christmas time, there's music on every Kohl's ad, every Target ad, and it is there to invoke an emotion. And sometimes, I mean, you just listen to a movie soundtrack. You can tell what's going on based on the music. And my husband always jokes when we're watching TV or something. He's like, "Uh-oh, something's going to happen. The music started." You know, so it's such a manipulator, but also it's a good thing too, you know. But I think definitely advertising companies have kind of tapped into how they can use music to manipulate the consumers because it does evoke an emotion. I know that when um, I've had a bad day or I just want to get away from people, I just tell my husband I just need to sit in my music room for about an hour, and I'll get out my old music books that my grandma passed on to me. She played organ in the church for so many years and kind of just hands down the music when she's done with it. And I'll just sit at the piano and play. Or I'll be like, I can feel like my insides, like something's bothering me. So I'll get out the guitar and I'll try to play around. And sometimes I don't come up with any words. Sometimes I'm just noodling around. And if I want to feel sad, I'll sometimes play sad music just to make me feel worse and get it out of my system. um, and I think everybody kind of has, you know, their own coping mechanisms. My husband's the same thing. He's like, I just want to feel something. I'm gonna go sit in my truck and um, play like this heavy metal music, and nobody else is around, and I can just, you know, let my emotions take over for a short amount of time because music. I know what I have to listen to in order for that to happen. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
I think Lee makes a few interesting points, and one that I'd like to focus in is she was talking about, and you were too talking about music in cinema, and in the movie business, it is said that you shouldn't really hear the music. You know, it's like the music is there, and somebody asks you objectively, you can say it's there, but the best of it is when you actually don't notice it, and it's but if it stops, you notice.
oh yeah.
You know, it's like if you ever listen to like the NPR or any of the produced podcasts, there will be music in it, and then the music stops, and the person is speaking. It and then it'll come back in, it'll ease back in, but that clarity, you know, of the absence of the music, you know, it's kind of like if you're a monkey and all of a sudden the birds shut up, you know, you should shut up too and
Yeah.
start looking around because it probably is not good. You know, so that background music, it it has a it has a purpose. Or like in you know, you go in Christmas time, that's when I hate music most. It's because everywhere you go, they're playing the same songs, and it's over and over and over again. And pretty soon my brain is numb, you know, from the, and I'm thinking, oh, when will Christmas be over? Because, you know, and some stores, they have the worst renditions of the Christmas music you could find. You know, it's like the $1.99 album that was on sale for 99 cents, and they bought it and played it over and over. You know?
I agree.
So, uh, and it was made up of music that couldn't sell otherwise. But let's talk a little bit about music. You know, the music in your songs, because Lee brings up a really important point about that, the music accompaniment to the lyrics. And as you mentioned it's a good place to mention, because you mentioned going to a Lutheran church. One of the things I noticed after going to the Lutheran church is how many times the same music is used with a different poem, and then it's a different song.
Yeah.
Exactly the same music. If you learn about 4 or 5 musical music scores, you can probably play 80% of the songs in the Lutheran church, because
Right.
they just changed the poem, I think.
Yeah, I do love that about the Lutheran church. Well, just any church that has like the hymnal, because it's so chordal. It's so like I
Mhm.
could analyze it so easily, and it's predictable. And I think that's important for congregational singing, because a lot of them don't read music, and so it's important to have something predictable like that. I
Mhm.
forgot where I was going with that. Okay. Oh, so accompaniment. So I actually started writing on piano when I was 14. My mom made me take piano lessons for the longest time, and I despised piano lessons, mainly because of the theory part. And now I'm a theory nerd, so I look back at myself and I'm like, why did I hate it so much? But yeah, it was just that you had to practice. It's kind of like my son now. When I want him to read, you got to read before the video games. I don't want to read. Reading's terrible. So I think it was that same thing. And then once my mom finally let me quit piano lessons, I started playing the piano more because I was sitting down and I could play what I wanted to play. So when I first started playing, I feel like my accompaniments for my song were much better on the piano. When I got to Nashville, I realized how hard it is to set up a keyboard in a 3-person round, and they want you to set it up super fast because the rounds have 3 or 4 people in them, and you only get 3 songs, and you literally have like a minute before the host is like saying, test your mic, test your piano, test your. And so I was like a keyboard player in a guitar town basically, and I had to have this huge like road case for my piano. So I was like, okay, I need to learn how to play guitar. So I started playing guitar so that I could write more up tempo, because a boom chuck on the piano is just not very fun. um so I really don't feel like, I know Lee had mentioned that the music was there. I just don't feel like I'm a very skilled guitar player. I play chords mostly. And so when I would go to record my music, that's when the real musicians came into play, and they're just amazing. I don't have any other way to describe when you go into a studio and they play a rough recording of me just playing my guitar and my chunky chords, and they listen to it one time and they go off into their little rooms in the recording studio, and there's suddenly like this full band. I was like, I wrote that, but but they come up with all these little licks, and that's when the music really came to life for me. Is like that was almost an addiction when you can hear something like that, because I can only do so much. I've now started to pick a tiny bit, And I'm trying to be better at that. I'm trying to grow as a musician that way. But a lot of times when I play just my rough raw originals, like I don't really have a really good introduction with the, like I don't have a mew 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 or anything like that. It's just me and the chords. And so yeah, I need to get better at that myself, but that's really where the music kind of comes to life for me, is when other people are playing it in the studio.
What does the music do for the lyrics? I think in a way that's
Well,
gets
I
to.
think I think the term I'm looking for is prosody. That's when you have a marriage of the lyrics and the melody.
Say
And
that word again.
prosody.
Prosody. Okay.
Yep. And I feel like I have really good prosody with, I mean, I've always been told that I'm a good melody writer, which then I'm like, oh, so I stink at writing lyrics. I think I've gotten better at writing lyrics, but I would definitely say I'm better at melody writing. So I feel like because I am limited accompaniment wise on my instrument, that I feel like that kind of forces me to have better prosody with my melody and my lyrics, because that's where the marriage is happening. I kind of look at the guitar as just kind of being a support. Otherwise I'd just be singing it a cappella with just the melody and the lyrics. So, um yeah, I just feel like my instrument is more like, I guess, the backup band, like the band behind me or something, or the background singers, and then hopefully there's a good marriage between the lyrics and the melody.
Yeah. Another way I think a person could put that is that the music creates the stage. If the lyrics are the actors, the music creates the stage. The music frames it. The music creates a stage for it to act on. And you put that same actor against a green screen where there's nothing, but and there's still something there.
Right.
There's still the essence of it there. But then when you put in the trees, the mountains in the background, the geese flying or whatever else is happening, that creates a whole different relationship. And it is all relational,
Right.
so that music is important in that way. Let's talk a little bit about evoking emotions with music, because that happens whether it's church music or
Right.
country and western music, encouraging you to go buy a new pack of razor blades, uh, or whatever. What Tell us a little bit about how music does that. Maybe talk about, let's say, the difference between major and minor keys. That's pretty basic.
Oh yeah. So I know I talked about form a little bit before, but I mean, most of the songs that are big mega hits have, like the same chord progressions. In a major key you've got the one chord, which is your tonic, and then it goes to 4 or 5, and then you throw in some minors to kind of perk your ear up, and then it always brings you back home to the tonic, basically. I know there's also little tricks you can use, like I always call it the money chord. It's like a scale degree, basically a do re mi fa sol la ti do. If you take ti, which is leading the tone back to do, basically, and I flat it, so I go down like a half step. All of a sudden you're playing this chord that's not in the key, and the listener's like, "Oh, what's that?" Because our ears are just so, we don't even know it, but our ears are just so used to hearing music written in this major scale, and all of a sudden you throw a chord in there that's not normally supposed to be in that key, and then it tells us, oh, something's happening. So there was this one, well, the one time I discovered the flat 7 chord, somebody played it. I was like, "What is that?" And then for the longest time, I was putting it in like every song, and I put it right before the hook. So all of a sudden, the listener's like, "Oh, something's changing," and then there's the hook. So, yeah, there's a
But tell us,
lot.
I'm sure there are people here who are not in the music business. Tell us what a hook is, because
Oh,
that's
okay.
important to
So
these
there's a couple different kinds of hooks. There's of course your lyrical hook, which is normally the title. So something catchy that you can remember, so you can go Google it or get it on Spotify. But then there's also like melodic hooks. Like you could play the introduction to Crazy, and you know exactly what song it is. Um, I'm trying to think of some other songs that have really spectacular like melodic hooks that the second it plays you're like, oh yeah, I like this song because I know what it is.
Mhm.
So you have melodic and lyrical hooks, and they use them to, they say hook because they want to reel us in and get us to not change the channel.
Mhm. Mhm. And also to get you interested in the song, to
Yeah.
emotionally ground you and pull you into the song, you need that
Yeah.
hook. Okay, so I thought we needed to do that just so we don't lose too many people. And you talked about a tonic, and that's a music theory thing that maybe it's a rabbit hole too deep. But but is there anything you can say to help people who are not familiar with that term understand what you mean when you say that?
Yeah. So it might be easier to play it.
Mhm.
So for example, if I'm in the key of D, that means D is the home tone or the tonic. So I'll play D, and then I could go to the 4 chord, which is A. I know everybody's heard that progression. Here's the tonic again. And I'll go to the 5 chord, G, back to A. That's 3 chords. You know that saying, 3 chords in the truth?
Mhm.
Well, that's what that is. The 3 chords are the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. And you can write, oh, you can probably find hundreds of songs that are all written with those 3 chords.
Mhm.
So, and then we could write all those songs. All you gotta do is change the rhythm or how fast or quick you move from one to the next, and you got a different song.
Right. And also the progression, whether you go
Yes,
1-4-5 or 1-5-4 or four
exactly.
five one, but you're still doing so. And when we say the numbers, tell us a little bit about when you say the numbers on that, because this is real basic. And if people actually know this, it's amazing. They might be the piano player for church next week once you
Right?
understand the hook of that.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, if you have a piano, it's really easy to see it on the piano. That's how I teach my kids in choir too. So the 1 is just where you start. And if you go up to the 4, so if I were like in the key of C, C would be 1. And then you just go up D, E, F, G.
Mhm.
So your 1 chord is C, your 4 chord is F, and your 5 chord is G. So it's just basically counting up those whole steps um, from the first one.
Yeah. So instead of going A, B, C, you're doing 1-2-3.
Right, exactly. And so like there's two kind of schools of thought with this. If you go to a school for music education, you learn the Roman numeral chordal analysis of songs. But if you go to Nashville, they use everything with the Nashville number system.
Mhm.
So instead of like getting a chart that has um on this lyric you're gonna play an A chord, they have like a 1, so that let's say you get a singer in the studio and that key that they picked is not working for them, then you just raise it a half step. Okay, let's play it in B flat. And so all those musicians know that B flat is the 1 chord, F is the 4 chord, and G is the 5 chord, or whatever it turns out to be. So yeah, and that's how they use it in Nashville. Is you'll get a chart with literally numbers, and then they have like other little symbols that would get. We won't go into all the specifics that mean
Yeah.
certain things, but
Just as a side note, a whole language has been written on that. That, and it's not just a music language, it's actually a literary language that has been written, that has been developed on that same idea. you
right.
know the do re mi fa sol la ti do.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty amazing if you think about it and really get into it.
Yes. Any other questions by from our audience and other participants, mutual, our co-conspirators?
Excuse me.
I had one more question.
Hmm.
No, more of a statement about how the music affects brains.
Hmm.
My first husband was in a nursing home 7 years, so I got to know many, many patients. And what I noticed was the same as I am now with the people where my husband has dementia and that is how music affects them. Many cannot speak. However, when there's music, they not only speak, they're singing the songs. Must do something to the brain that enlightens. I'm sorry my face is gone, but I don't know what happened to my video, but whatever it is, I screwed that up. But how does that affect the brain? Is that the same part that creates emotions? That part of the brain is no longer functioning, but that part exists? Is that how it works?
Well, I'm not a scientist, but I will tell you that I believe that it goes back to the left brain, right brain. And whichever side is our analytical, logical side is not the same side that we are creating music with or storing, I guess, those memories is kind of how I look at it. Like my grandpa ended up dying after he had a long battle with Alzheimer's. And I remember when he didn't know who we were anymore, we would still go sing to him, and we would sing a song, and pretty soon like the tears would start rolling down his face because I still think he could access those memories somehow. Maybe not know who we were while we were singing, but he still associated those memories with us. The brain is just such a complex organ in our body. I really do think it has to do with the left and the right brain, though.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions, comments? Jenny?
I'm on the air.
Yeah, you're on the air. You're on the air.
First, I want to certainly give me a break, will you? I affirm wholeheartedly what Lee has just talked about, because I worked 10 years in a small nursing home and I saw that happen time after time. We were lucky to have musicians come in fairly regularly, and it was wonderful to see people who did not communicate any other way but relate to the music with tapping their toe or their fingers or starting to mouth the words. It was just beautiful. I want to move to another part of our conversation when you were talking about having venues. And I guess I realized this from a distance that it's really darn hard to make a living in the music business. I lived with a professional musician for over 20 years and heard lots and lots of stories about his experiences around the world. But I would love to see you play in our coffee house in Aberdeen, and I think that could be worked into more than one concert. We have other venues around town. I have gone to concerts at our ARC, the Aberdeen Area Recreational Cultural Center, that were subsidized by the Humanities Council. And then we have some outdoor places, parks that have little stage areas, lots of churches, lots of schools. And it's all what you're looking for, but I know there would be a very receptive audience at the Red Rooster Coffee House, for instance. So I hope you'll find time to do that. It's probably exhausting to do the traveling and all, but I know that there's a lot of soul restoring that goes on for the musicians when they can play before an attentive audience. And I think you'd find a lot of that here.
Awesome. Thank you.
This has been just so nice. Your song was very touching. I'm a mother of children who are fast approaching 60, and it still touched my maternal heart when I was raising children of that age. You're torn between wanting them to grow up and be the finest men in the world, and yet you don't want them to leave the comfort of your knee.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And speaking of venues too, one that wasn't mentioned and probably should be on the top of the list is home concerts. You know,
Yeah.
that is really a thing now, and it's really good for both the artist and the the audience. Uh, it's very interesting, especially when you have those songs that are intimate and then people can talk about it, or you interact with it on a very personal level. And my reconnaissance tells me that usually people make more money on house concerts than they do playing at a bar where people are throwing beer bottles on the stage, or something like that. It's a thing, and many people, are looking for something to do, especially when they buy those Cinderella houses and they need to do something with the garage that they don't have a car for the third garage. So, or the backyard, or even just in the living room. And it provides, who can afford entertainment where the people pay, the party goers pay for the entertainment. That's kind of the way it works, because
Right.
people pass the hat, and then the whoever the host is, they'll guarantee, let's say you get $100, and that for the song. But anything, and so the $100 is yours even if nobody shows up. But ideally, people will show up and throw in 5, 10, some people throw in $20. Because look, the people pay $100 to go, and they're paying mostly for the venue.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if people have the venues in their house, and that leads to musicians using their own homes as a source of invite all your friends, like we used to do rent parties when people, you didn't have your rent, you just buy some potato chips, tuna fish, and Kool-Aid, and invite everybody over to your house, because you can just say, hey, you're having a rent party. Everybody come in, and rather than going to the club and spending $20, you came to this person's house and spend $5 and you have more fun, And then the person who, they got their rent now. You don't have to have them in your house.
Right.
They
Yeah.
get kicked out. Anyone else?
I had a comment about what you guys were talking about with right and left brain that was kind of interesting. I don't know if you guys know Glenn Campbell, the famous country musician. I watched a documentary about him, and it was heartbreaking because he had Alzheimer's. But the interesting thing was the last thing to go was his guitar playing. Like, even when he couldn't even remember like who his kid was, he could still play guitar, just because it was in that, just that automatic. I never remember if it's the left brain or the right brain, but that was interesting to me. Like, he didn't even know who people were, but he could still play those riffs that he had learned so long ago.
That's very interesting. I saw Glenn Campbell in Des Moines. That would have been in the early 2000s, and he was just getting Alzheimer's. And I was right close to the stage, and his daughter was with him. And of course, he didn't know lyrics as well, and so she'd have the words on. Well, she finally told me he knew the lyrics, but he couldn't read them. That was still in his brain, the guitar, and he would be singing them. But she thought he was reading the lyrics, and she said, we found later that he didn't use them. I just want you to know that. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to add, Ryan reminded me with his comment, I worked in a small nursing home for 10 years and my parents were residents there for a few years before they died, both of them at the age of 90. My dad was an old time fiddler most of his life. And he did a lot of that. He went to nursing homes, he went to contests and in the parks, and he had usual people who were part of the group who would show up and they'd play together. So when he was in the nursing home with Alzheimer's, he got to where he couldn't read anymore, and he was a lifelong reader. I remember one time when this group of his all showed up there to play for the entertainment of the residents, and I don't think they'd been there for quite a while. And astonishingly, my dad was able to stand up and pick up his fiddle and play with them. Saying it out loud just really is emotional. So that we don't lose it all necessarily. He still knew who his children were and his wife, whom he adored. But I didn't think he'd be able to play. It just astonished me. Of course, my brother, who also plays, was there to make sure it was in tune, help him a little with that. But that was really good. I'm glad you reminded me, Ryan. I hadn't thought of that for quite a while.
That's a good memory.
Yeah, there are lots of ways that music plays an integral part in our environment and even like who we think we are, or how we see ourselves. The kind of music that we like sometimes becomes part of our identity, sometimes to a fault, but I'd like to talk about some of the messages that we use music to bring. Can you talk a little bit about that, Janice? Like some of the messages, and especially with your experience in Nashville, like what kind of things were people using music, ideas were people using music to bring out to people?
Well, are you like themes basically in the music, or
Themes, themes in the music, or even an idea in music.
Well, historically, I mean, music has been used for all things. You think of protest songs.
Mhm.
One that comes to mind, "We Shall Overcome," a big one from the civil rights movement. I think as songwriters, somebody told me this once. I'm trying to think who it was. It might have been John Mills, maybe, or Dakota Cap. There are a couple guys from around this area. But we, as songwriters, we kind of almost have a responsibility to somehow use our music to make the world a better place. And whether that's, if we feel strongly about something, write a song about that moves people to act, especially now. There's so much dissension in our country. I mean, in the world, but especially in our country. How can you use your music that way? I feel like in Nashville, though, people aren't really focused on that part so much because they're so looking to get that next number one hit or to find somebody to write with to get the commercial appeal. I feel like I never knew so many songwriters existed in South Dakota until I left and came back. And it's not that they weren't magically here before. It's just that I had to like go away to appreciate what's already here and to find like some of the songwriters here that are writing just beautiful, heart-wrenching music. And I find that the people who are outside of those commercial music areas are writing truly authentic music that moves people, and they aren't afraid to say what they want to say because they're not looking for anybody to approve of their music. They're just writing what they feel and what they know. And so I think music can definitely be used to, I don't know, promote acceptance, love.
Connection, human
Yeah,
connection. That's
yeah,
one. Yeah, yeah. And
yeah.
that's so true. And I think, it's worth pointing out, as you were mentioning before in that big mega church, how you felt connected. Well, what happens, that's why most churches have a part where people sing together, because when you sing together, the brain puts out oxytocin, which is a bonding hormone. And so there's a certain amount of just chemical reaction in the brain that leads you to feel connected with the people that you're singing with. Most cultures have some kind of way where people sing together. There's a few that will have like some weird thing where music is bad,
Right.
But most people, they have some kind of way that they sing together, even if they call it chanting, it's a way that you can get people to, or allow people to connect, create the mechanism for them to connect. So it's very useful in that way. And it's one of the best examples I can think of for communicating poignant messages in music is rap and hip hop. It's known as the newspaper of the streets. Whatever is happening there, people will make a movie. They will make a rap. That's how the whole thing got started, really. And people would like whatever was like the thing that people mutually experienced, or it was happening in their neighborhood, and somebody would make some kind of beat about it, and pretty soon they were doing it on street corners, and it got passed around that way. And you take, for example, like many kids, when they can't remember the ABCs, they teach them a song, and then they can get it because they can remember the song. If they can remember the alphabet, if there's a note attached to it and a song attached to it, and if there's a rhythm attached to it, that's how one of the ways that people get to memorize things. And many poems, which people find hard to remember, if you make a song of that same poem, they can remember it,
Yep.
So clearly I would say that music has some unique way that the brain can hold on to it and make sense of things more than just saying it or writing it down. Anyone else?
I'm going to throw out the one thing I hate that is evocative that I'm seeing all the time now on TV, and that is those mournful, pitiful, shivering dogs. Please rescue us. I'm so sick of that. If it's not about dogs, then it's about children, and I think that is so exploited. It must work.
It works. Even when that comes on, my son is like, "Mom, that's so sad. Let's send them money." It works for even 6-year-olds.
Or shoot the TV.
Right. Let's just change the channel.
Well, we're coming up on the end of this wonderful time we've spent with Janice. It's so nice of you to join us and help us with a conversation about music, Janice.
Well, thank you for having me. This has just been a delight today.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that it will encourage you to network with other people to let's get something happening with music. I mean, we got time to plan for the summer, and even if there's still COVID's out there, if you got people in a park,
right?
They don't have to be, in each other's lap,
Right.
at least not all in the same lap, because you could spread out, and there are places, venues that's big enough, backyards, and pick a windy day and it's all good.
Yeah.
Windy, sunshiny day. Yeah. Well, with that, thank you very much. we'll hope you, everyone will join us. Ryan, what's on deck for next week?
Next week, we're kind of continuing with the music theme. We're going to talk about music in other cultures and how it plays into other cultures versus our culture. So,
Okay, that should be a very exciting topic.
I'd also like to thank
Jan,
Janice for coming. I kind of roped her into this, but
It was great. It was a great roping.
did a really nice job. So,
Yeah.
I personally wanted to thank Jan very, very much. And I just want you to know you have an open invitation. I had a violinist on my deck. I had half the neighbors listening to her. She plays for the symphony. I just kind of met her and we clicked, and you're sure welcome. And I live in a neighborhood of 76 units, and we can do it in the summertime. Yes, we've had the city, I don't know what they call it, the Heritage Band.
Okay. Are you in Sioux Falls? Lee?
Yeah, I am, and I'm close to T, because if you know where the new Avira Hospital is,
Yep.
okay, I'm right there in the corner.
Oh, okay.
So I'm real close to. So I just want you to know, actually my name is in the phone book. I never use the phone, but an address, and yeah, you just call me.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Open invitation.
Yeah.
Anybody else too? I mean,
That's,
that's what that's what it's for. Uh-huh.
he is at the party house. That's why our house is on the party place.
Well, so you kind of know. So anyway, thank you for all you do.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you, Lawrence in South Dakota Humanities. I can't remember your name.
Ryan, sorry,
For
I always forget
doing
to
that.
change that.
Uh-huh. And Betty and Barb and Thea, bless your heart.
Mhm.
Alphonse, is that the way you pronounce it?
Alphonse.
Alphonse. And Jennifer.
Yeah.
Jennifer, yeah. Thank you very
All right.
much.
Well, we'll see everybody next week, same time, same
One
station.
quick question.
Oh, wait, quick, yeah.
Janice, how can people listen to your music?
Oh, so let's see. Trying to think of where it is. There's, oh goodness, I just totally blanked. You can find me on iTunes, Spotify. I have hard copies. Let's see. I have 3 CDs that are all digital. I sold out of the first one I have that's all hard copies. Trying to think what is Reverb Nation. You can listen to some of them for free. There might even be a download or 2 on there. But yeah, any digital service you can find me on there. If you want hard copies, cdbaby.com has hard copies. Yeah, I think that's where you can find them.
Yeah. CD Baby now, they now send you to, I think Amazon or one of those, because they got out of their hard copy distribution.
Oh wow! Yeah, I
Yeah.
have not logged into that for probably over a year, so I
Yeah,
probably
that was just about the
Yeah.
time that they got out of the distribution. It used to be able to order it right on their site. They decided to get out of that business.
okay.
But yeah, it's
So
a
I guess
thing.
you can find me on Amazon.
Yeah. And I think you can still locate them on there. So you can still go there, just that they don't do the mail out thing where you send
okay.
them the hard copies and then they send it out to people. They decided that wasn't really a good business model.
Yeah, everything's digital now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, we'll see you guys all next week and we'll have more fun.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, you bet. Bye.